Hey John, great to be working with you again. First off, hope you're doing okay physically, mentally, everything like that. We never want to go through the crashes and that negative side of things. So just hope that you're doing okay with it. We'll hopefully get you some clarity on what went wrong, how we can fix it in the future, and then move on to some more actionable coaching parts for the rest of the lap. But I wanted to start off with the crash. I know it's probably on your mind. I want to go straight into that. Let's cover that, put it back behind us, and move on and focus on some other things. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I brought the video back to 2 laps previous, and that was your last clean time through here before the crash. And I'm going to show you that you are already at the limit of the car here in the brake zone. And then on the lap we crashed, we tried to go even further, and it was just too far past the limit for some reasons, and I will get into that. But what we're going to look for here is we're coming into the brake zone, and what's interesting to me in this back section is our brake zone was very inconsistent in this session. I went and looked at every lap at our brake zone into turn 1 and into Oak Tree, the other 2 somewhat bigger brake zones here, and you were very consistent. So into turn 1, just inside the 6 board, 5 3/4 to 5.5 pretty consistently. Into Oak Tree, we were roughly about the 2.5 board pretty consistently. But here, you know, we started braking back in just inside the 3 board. On this lap, we brought it down to about the 2.5 board. So our brake zone here was anywhere from 2.5 to just inside the 3 to back out at like the 3.5 board. So wider range. So this lap here, let me just turn the volume on because our data is slightly delayed here. So this lap here, we're getting just inside the 3 board. I know that that's where the lift comes. Brake application comes a little bit later. What we're looking at is, as we get down to the 1 board, we're roughly at 146 miles an hour. And then as we're trying to turn in, you can see that even slow motion, that you're at the limit of the car. Because look at your hands here. You're especially looking on this kind of where we're looking at your head. You can see how you're kind of fighting the steering wheel, and we're missing that first apex because you're into that ABS, and we're missing that first apex. So you can tell right here, hey, we're at the limit of the brake zone. You can't really brake any deeper because you're already into the ABS trying to not fly off the side of the road here. Probably, if anything, I would have actually backed up my brake zone here, because what's going on is you're going so deep that you can't start to release the brake pressure. And this is a kind of an awkward long brake zone, so that yes, braking deep is important for lap time here, but what I'm trying to do is, as I'm turning into the left, as my hands are coming in, I need to be breathing off the brake pedal. I can't add brake pedal or hold that heavy brake pressure at this section. So that's what makes it such a weird corner. So what my goal is here is to have a hard brake and have that straight line braking. As I'm feeding it in, I'm trailing off, and I want to roll speed through this left-hander, and then, yes, add the brakes harder again for that next right-hander. So we're coming in, roll it off, let it fly over the top of the hill, and then braking harder for the right-hander. But you can see here, because we broke too deep, we weren't able to start releasing that brake pedal. We're holding that ABS, we get offline, and then we actually, I know that we have a car in front of us, but then we would have actually overslowed because we were so focused on braking deep, oh shit, let me not fly off the road, hold the brakes, that we actually tend to overslow. And that's why braking deep is the last thing that we work on, and why it's slightly less important for a fast lap through 14. So you can see we're about 146 miles an hour turn at the board 1. We got it down to about 104 miles an hour here at the first curve. So going to the lap of our incident, what we're going to see is, let me turn the volume back off. What we're going to see is we tried to brake even deeper by a good margin. So I'm going to turn the volume on. Let's pause it where we hear that lift. So the last lift came just inside the 3 board, and we were at the limit of the car. Now we've gone a lot deeper. That's a huge difference from just inside the 3 board to going all the way down to the 2 board. That's massive. If I'm working on trying to brake deeper, I might go from lifting at the 3 board to lifting a half car length or so later. I'm definitely not going to make a big jump, even if I feel conservative and you are at the limit. So even if you know, like, let's say we're starting to learn the track, and you're, you know, lifting initially at the 4.5 board, I'm not going to go immediately down to the 4 board even. I'm going to work it down like car length, car length and a half, and that's before I've even found the limit. So the first problem is we just made this huge jump to the 2 board here, and what makes that even worse is if this was a traditional brake zone where we're braking in a straight line for a long period of time until the turning point, it would have been a big negative, I think a similar result. But what makes this even more difficult for us is now you have, because this corner starts to bend to the left, now you have a lot less time than even a traditional corner for straight line hard braking. So now where we're starting to brake, and you can see our actual light comes on at the 1.5 board, and you can see we're almost immediately turning in here. So now, not only are we braking a lot later, but we also have a lot less straight line braking, which also means you're not going to be braking as efficiently. So the lap before, we were at 146 miles an hour. Now we're at 151 miles an hour. So 5 miles an hour more right here, which is huge. And we don't have the ability to continue to have that straight line braking. And you can see by the time we get to this curve, we're at 118 miles an hour. So roughly, I think that was 12, 13 miles an hour more right here. There's nothing you could do at this point. It's just too much speed. So the primary issue here really was our brake zone, where we are already at the limit, and then we just took another big chunk out of it and said, hey, let me try to go even deeper. And by this point here, there's nothing you could do. You just went way too deep for the limit of your car. So I think our focus for driving a fast lap here is incorrect. So we do want to work, obviously, on late brake zones. I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, that doesn't matter. Of course it does. But on our priority list, braking late is the last thing that we want to work on. And I think on your priority list, when you're trying to find speed, late braking is higher up than it should be. So what I would like to see you work on the next time you're out here is not trying to really challenge the super late brake zone. So I like the previous lap where, let's say you're braking, before the previous lap where you went a little bit over the limit, you were lifting inside the 3 board. I would say let's try braking out of the 3 board. And what I want to do is hard, release. And then if you want to focus on lap time, it's about the release here, and it's about rolling the speed up over the hill. Let me go back to that previous lap here. So where you find the speed, I know we have a little bit of a car in front of us though, is coming in, braking, and then brake, release at the 1 board or at the angle board here as we start to get our turning point. Release, let the car roll over the top of the hill, and then add a little brakes, turning in. That's where we find our speed in 14, not by braking deeper. And I think we're going to find that elsewhere as well, that we're going to have a little bit less focus right now on those super late brake zones until you can make those really small adjustments, not big one full board at a time. I know that you also said that you felt like you broke lighter on that lap initially. Obviously, there's nothing here I can really confirm that with, but that would be another negative as well. As we are braking a lot deeper, well, then we definitely want to be hitting those brakes harder. So if you broke that much deeper and you weren't as aggressive to it, I don't think that's what caused the incident, but it probably didn't help things. So we always want to have that hard initial brakes, releasing. Typically we don't add brake pressure again, but this is a very funky corner and one that we do want to add that additional brake zone, brake pressure as we're coming back to the right. So focus more on the brake release and rolling at entry speed more than the super late brake zones. So hopefully that makes sense. We can help you move on from that. Obviously, I'm more than happy to hop on a call with you, talk through this a little bit more if you have any other questions. We want to help you get back up on the horse, move on from this. So always happy to do anything we can for that. So let's go on to other coach notes here that we've got. And what I went through is you, throughout the entire session, at one point, you did every corner extremely well. So what I'm going to do is highlight 3 main corners I want to focus in on. I'm going to show you when you did it maybe not so great, and then when you did it really, really well, so we can really have that focal, more of a focus point and build that consistency. What I'm really looking for here is you've got it in you, you've done it. Now, how do we get it more consistent? And I think that'll obviously help for incidents and things like that as well. So let's go here. 1128. Oops. So what we're going to talk about is 5A, 5B here. So I'm going to play this full speed with the volume on, and I'm going to pause it and highlight some things that I'm looking for. And what I'm really focused in on here is your exit out of 5B, because that's going to be the most important thing. And then I'm going to show you when you did it really well. So this is a lap where it was not so great through 5B, and I'm going to show you why. Make sure we're getting a nice blip here into 4, because that's going to help you really trail, break in, and roll that speed. Other laps, you had a much better blip. A little bit too early to throttle here in 4. I really want to see you trail, braking to the end of that curve. So from this point on, what I want you to, and I'm hoping you can hear this okay, but if not, I'll still go through it. What I want you to listen for is when you're getting back to full throttle out of 5B, and where's your lift coming into 5B. And you'll see you have a lot of understeer this lap, and then it causes you to only pick up the throttle, full throttle too late. It's because we carried this maintenance throttle too long out of 5A. So we're only back to full throttle out over here, and it seemed to me this lap you're more focused on trying to be on throttle, not really lift, and you kind of picked up the throttle, you turned in still on throttle, you lifted, then you picked up the throttle a little bit here, and then you lifted again. And you can see this understeer doesn't allow you to pick up the throttle until past the curb. And here, because we have this long straightaway here, I'm really focused on when do we get back to full throttle. And yes, obviously that entry speed matters, but we had too much of it this lap. So what I'm going to do here is let's go to the next lap. What time is it? 13:32. I'm going to show you here you did it really, really well and why that's the case. So let's just listen for that lift and listen for that throttle. Lifting. Back to full throttle or right about full throttle here. That's what we want to see. So what you did really well this lap is you spent less time on throttle, but you were more aggressive on throttle. So you spent more time closer to full throttle, but less overall time on throttle. And that's what we want. We want to treat maintenance throttle as an avoidable thing. So we did a great job out of 5A getting back to aggressive throttle. And then here, as we're turning into 5B, that's where our lift comes. Perfect. And then you're patient, you're patient, you're patient, you're patient. Go, 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 go. And that's what's giving you the big run out of there versus the previous lap where we were kind of rolling the speed in and we don't get back to that full throttle until it's too late. And because of that, we're not getting the same exit out of there. In fact, let me just see here. I'm looking for one thing. Sorry, 1 second here. I'm just looking for one thing. Okay, so sit. Oops. Let's just play this full speed one more time. And you can actually see here, so on the lap that you got back to that full throttle, in the same point, you had you're 3 miles an hour faster. So on the faster lap, the one that we want, you're at 76 miles an hour right here, right at the start of this left-hand curve. Right now you're at 73, even though you had higher apex speed. So it's about a little bit more about getting back to that full throttle. So the next thing I want to go through is turn 1. And there's sometimes, is it turn 1? Oops, let me see here. I think I wrote down the wrong time. Let me just put this volume up and take a listen one time here. So, yes, when we had a clean lap here, this turn 1, fantastic. Really, really solid. In the higher horsepower cars, we do want to delay that initial throttle until the end of the curve. That's where you picked up the throttle. And let's just take a look at where your apex speed is, where it's 51 down to 48 miles an hour, and then 47 miles an hour, and then you're feeding it in. What I noticed, though, is when we started to try and chase down another car, and we were focused maybe a little bit more on trying to say, hey, I want to go fast, we started to lose our discipline of really getting that car slowed down and rotated, and you started to really try to roll that speed through turn 1, and that caused us to only pick up the throttle too late. So now we're later in the session, we're trying to chase down some cars in front of us, and let's just play this full speed here and pause it where you pick up that initial throttle. So you can see here, we're about 4 miles an hour faster right now. So we're just under 10% faster here. And we're only picking up the throttle way out at this exit curve now. So just continue to remind yourself, and this is, again, priorities and where we're trying to focus. When we're trying to go fast, don't let that mean, hey, let me roll more speed through here. Sometimes when you're trying to go fast, you've actually got to slow it down a little bit more in the corners. And obviously we're talking about small margins here, but you can see by being 4 miles an hour too fast right now, we're not able to start picking up the throttle here, which is where you were before. Now you're waiting, you're waiting, you're waiting, you're waiting, and you're only picking it out over here. And now our minimum speed comes out at the exit curve, where before your minimum speed was coming back out over here. So yes, on this lap, you'll be faster from roughly about here to that exit curve, but now you're slower all the way down to turn 3 because of that. So just remember to turn 1, and this is all within margin, we really want to trail brake, get that rotation. What's most important is having the speed to where you can start to feed that throttle in right now. And the last thing, so in terms of what we want to focus on in coaching, the two main areas for me are that 5A, 5B section, and then turn 1. Through turn 3, we looked really solid. Through the hog pen, we looked awesome. I'm really, really happy with hog pen. The last thing I want to talk about is oak tree. And this is going to be slightly actually an overtaking note, but also I saw that we were kind of consistently doing this line. So wow, look, I want to be clear here. I know you're not racing, and overtaking is not a priority, but let's talk about it here, because I think you are trying to set up and being a little bit frustrated by this Porsche that you're faster than, but they wouldn't let you buy that a lot more horsepower. Trying to overtake a car with more horsepower than you is one of the most frustrating things as a race car driver. There's nothing you can really do. You have to hope for a mistake from them, and you have to really drive your lines, because you're faster than them, and you got to just keep hitting your marks and not let that frustration come out. When I'm on a track like this, a practice session, and even in IMSA on WeatherTech side, if I'm in a practice session, I'm around a car that I'm faster than, that has more horsepower than me, I'm not able to overtake, I'm going to lift and just get to a different section of the racetrack. And I think that's something just to keep in the back of your mind in future sessions. If you're around someone like this that just have a ton more horsepower and you just can't get by them, don't ruin a session. And I don't even mean by an incident, but it gets frustrating, right? And you get stuck and you're not driving at the limit of your car because where you can roll the speed, you can't because of them. Take a lift, come into the pit lane, let them go, and then get around cleaner cars or cleaner traffic that you can pass or get by easily. But But that being said, what we're looking for here into Oak Tree is we're pretty good here on entry. And right now, I know I'm not going to be able to overtake this car right here. I'm too far back, and this is a pretty high risk move, and not one that I would try at a track day event. Even in pro racing, this is a that there's going to be some contact here when you go for it, and it's a pretty high risk move. So I don't think you're trying to overtake this car, but if you are, what I'd like to see you rather do, and even though that they have this much more horsepower, I want to be driving my line. So I want to come out much wider and be focused on this exit out of here to maximize the drive, because now we're trying to say, hey, maybe we're trying to be in their mirrors, drive to the inside. Now we're offline, and now they're online. We're not going to pass them, and even more negatively, we're not going to have the same run out of here. So yes, you do get back over a little bit, but you can just see now the corner is more tight than it needs to be versus if you're out there already and got that rotation. And because of that, you don't get your maximum exit, and now we lose a lot of time out of here. And maybe I don't think you would have been close enough to overtake, but you would have been a little bit closer. And trying to show someone that, hey, I'm faster, and being in the mirrors is always about being consistently there. So what I'd like to have seen you do is, rather than looking to the inside in Oak Tree, is been out wider and really focus on getting that exit out of there. Now let's go to a cleaner lap through Oak Tree. Oops. And what I'm looking for here is, and this might be just your normal line, I do want to see you be a little bit less focused on getting down to this curve and have a little bit later of a turn in and wider through the middle of the corner. See how we're starting to turn in? We're not even really getting all the way out to the left. So the first thing is, let's make sure we're getting all the way out to the left. And then we want to start our turn in more at that angle board right here. Oops, if I can get this thing to work. There we go. This is where our turn-in should come. And I want to avoid this curve. I use curves, so I'm trying to really rotate the car. Here I want to bring in that entry speed and trail brake deep into the corner. So I want to have one long steering arc through this corner. So I want to see you have a later turn-in point. And then notice here that Porsche's got a pretty nice line through here. They're a little bit wider. And see how they're getting out to the outside of the corner in the middle here much earlier than you, and what they're able to do is get all the way out there, continue to slow it down gently, versus you've got a line here that's more like this, and you have a very tight angle, where they're coming out and they're more just smoother with the car. So they've got a car angle that's more like this, where they can get the car weight, they've got it transferred, and they're just slowly turning down to the apex. When you have this aggressive and then really tight angle, cars don't like that, especially more street cars, because that's a lot of weight transfer, and the faster and more aggressive you have to turn the steering wheel, the more you're going to shock because of too much weight transfer, and you're going to blow through the grip. So I think you're going to find you're going to have more speed through here by getting out there earlier like this Porsche, and actually having a slightly earlier turn-in point, but slower with your hands and being smoother with the car. The last note for me is, and I think we've talked about this before, but it's building that discipline with your hands and keeping it at that 9 and 3 o'clock. As we're starting to drive closer to the limit, especially here at VIR, where you've got those S's, and I saw one lap you even got lift off the front end, you're at the limit of the car in those high-speed corners. That's when it becomes so critical to have your hands at 9 and 3 o'clock. And the reason is, when we're at the limit, we're always making those micro adjustments, right? Like you've got little smooth inputs as you're trying to save the car. It becomes way more difficult to be smoother with our adjustments when your hands are shifting. When your hand goes to the top of the steering wheel, think about leverage. The same amount of what you feel like is movements here becomes a lot more aggressive up here, and that's where overcorrections happen. And overcorrections can be a big problem as we're driving closer to the limit. So for me, one of the most important things is being consistent. And it did see, like, you know, through the S's and everything like that, that our hands were at 9 and 3 o'clock. And I want to see that everywhere. Because we're still, as we're getting close to the limit, as we're bringing in speed through Oak Tree, we're going to be, you know, constantly maybe making, like, getting the car a little bit too much free, a little bit too much entry speed in here. You're going to want to make those small micro corrections, and you can't do that when your hands are up there. So there's a reason why I'm a little bit picky with that, and I want to continue to see that, and that's why. So like I said, I hope you're doing okay. If we can do anything else for you, please let us know. You know, I'm more than happy to hop on a call, talk through any of this if you want. Thanks again for using Racers360. We hope to see you back out on the track soon. And continue to progress. I think overall you're driving really, really, really well. It's just kind of getting our priorities within what leads to good lap times fixed a little bit, concentrate on the right things, and that'll help our consistency, safety on track, and the speed will come as well. So look forward to seeing the track soon. If there's anything else we could do for you, just let us know.